The Han Dynasty of the 2nd century BCE was a massive, rigidly structured agrarian empire. Its power was permanently bound to the land, rooted in fixed cities and static irrigation infrastructure. Agrarian wealth requires a massive population to cultivate the fields and harvest the grain. This inherent requirement restricts military speed. Han armies were dense infantry formations, tethered to slow-moving supply trains. North of the Han frontier lies the Mongolian Plateau. It is a continuous, unbroken ocean of grass, lacking narrow geographical choke points or cities to defend. The Xiongnu Confederacy dominated this space. They operated as a highly sophisticated military power, possessing absolute strategic mobility across the steppe. Because their archers moved entirely on horseback, Xiongnu light cavalry could condense into a massive strike force, hit an agrarian target, and disperse before the Han could organize a response. A Han infantry column marching at 15 miles a day could not force an engagement with a cavalry unit covering 40. The physical weight of the Han forces made it mathematically impossible to intercept these mobile strikes. When an adversary possesses absolute mobility, they dictate exactly when and where a battle occurs. Under those conditions, the size and strength of a static defending army becomes completely irrelevant. The initial Han strategy to counter this mobility threat relied on defensive attrition through an elongated network of border fortifications. These early Great Wall variants were not impenetrable stone fortresses. They were simple rammed earth barriers designed to act as early warning systems and speed bumps. The Xiongnu bypassed these defenses by massing their forces in forward staging areas, like the Ordos region, allowing them to overwhelm isolated garrisons at will. Manning a massive defensive perimeter drains the national treasury and guarantees that the majority of your troops are always in the wrong place at the wrong time. By the reign of Emperor Wu, the imperial court recognized the mathematical reality of the conflict. Attempting to win a war of defensive attrition across thousands of miles of border is doomed. Emperor Wu initiated a strategic pivot. The Han state abandoned its defense, projecting lethal force into the north to physically destroy Xiongnu staging grounds. Executing deep strikes required an asset the Han military lacked, a dedicated expeditionary cavalry force. To defeat a highly mobile adversary, a static state must undergo the agonizing process of entirely dismantling its military doctrine and rebuilding it to fight on the enemy's terms. This data visualization compares the daily caloric requirements of a human farmer against a military warhorse. It exposes the central paradox of Emperor Wu's strategy. An expeditionary cavalry is a parasitic drain on an agrarian economy. Breeding warhorses requires vast amounts of grain and forage, directly cannibalizing the arable land needed to feed the human population. Decades prior, the Han minister Cao Kuo authored a memorandum addressing this exact friction. He advocated integrating nomadic mobility with Han technological superiority. Cao Kuo assessed that Han recruits lacked the lifelong riding experience of the nomads. To offset inferior horsemanship, the Han would need to field shock cavalry equipped with heavy armor and highly disciplined formations. The state leveraged its advanced metallurgy as a force multiplier, mass-producing standardized weapons to equip this new heavy cavalry. The primary technological offset was the mechanical crossbow. The precision engineering of its bronze trigger mechanism allowed Han troops to penetrate leather armor at long ranges, negating the advantage of Xiongnu composite bows. Adopting an offensive cavalry doctrine forced the Han to weaponize their agricultural base, shifting the empire from a state of agrarian surplus into a total war economy. Emperor Wu's mobilization occurred on a massive geographic scale. The Han state established 36 government pastures across the northern frontier. This unprecedented government breeding program was a monumental success, amassing a staggering inventory of over 450,000 military-grade horses. These animals underwent rigorous selection and training to ensure they would maintain discipline and formation during a cavalry charge. The material evidence of this societal shift from infantry to mounted warfare is visible in surviving artifacts, like this painted ceramic cavalryman showcasing standard riding gear. The financial cost of this mobilization was catastrophic. The expense of the equine arms race quickly exhausted the national treasury. Maintaining the caloric intake of nearly 500,000 horses forced the government to secure entirely new streams of revenue. The state implemented a radical solution by exerting strict government monopolies over the empire's core private industries. Salt production was nationalized. Iron smelting was nationalized, all to fund the cavalry. This caused a severe macroeconomic shock. The prices of essential tools and dietary staples surged, transferring the financial burden of the military directly onto the civilian population. The Han re-engineered their entire macroeconomy to fund a mobile strike force, making the logistical engine the primary tool of statecraft. To reach the Xiongnu, the Han cavalry had to cross the Gobi Desert, a freezing, barren expanse that acted as a formidable physical barrier. The Han official Yan Yu documented the severe difficulty of this crossing, recording the strict physical limits of military expeditions in the region. This chart illustrates his baseline formula. For a standard 300-day expedition, each Han soldier required exactly 360 liters of dried grain. The logistical catch is the transport method. This weight required heavy ox-drawn wagons, but the oxen had to consume a portion of the payload just to survive the journey. Yan Yu defined the critical failure point. In the barren desert, the draft oxen would starve within exactly 100 days. After 100 days, the supply line collapses. Soldiers must either carry their own diminished supplies or face immediate starvation. The uncompromising mathematical physics of supply consumption in a hostile environment ultimately sets the hard limits on power projection. These limits were tested during the decisive Mobe campaign in 119 BCE, when Emperor Wu deployed 100,000 cavalrymen into the steppe. To locate the main Xiongnu force, the Han army deliberately pushed themselves to the extreme outer limits of Yan Yu's calculated supply radius. Han texts record severe environmental hazards along the march, detailing freezing temperatures, a total lack of water, and altitude sickness at a location they called Great Headache Mountain. The physical destruction of the supply column began long before any engagement with Xiongnu forces. Tactically, the campaign succeeded. The Han forces engaged the Xiongnu and drove their main force entirely out of the Gobi Desert. A logistical autopsy of this strategic victory reveals the catastrophic cost to the Han military infrastructure. The final casualty metric shows that the Han lost approximately 100,000 horses during the single campaign. Environmental exposure and starvation claimed the vast majority of these animals, dwarfing the casualties caused by Xiongnu arrows. Replacing these mounts nearly broke the Han economy, validating the prior warnings regarding the staggering cost of the equine arms race. The Han Dynasty secured victory through sheer economic attrition. They triumphed only because their massive agrarian engine possessed the wealth and blood to absorb logistical losses that would have eradicated any other empire.